What's up, peers? And welcome to Bitcoin to the Max, here on the World Crypto Network. We're talking about the attributes of money. And we talked about the scarcity, the attribute that a money needs to be scarce. That if Alice hands it over to Bob, Alice relinquishes full control over that good. And what necessarily arises as a second attribute of a money in the progression of time is that it is immutable and irreversible. So that once Alice has given over the gold coin to Bob, that she has fully relinquished control, achieved scarcity, right? But in a matter that she can no longer remove it and take it back. So Alice cannot, with a snap of a finger, get back the same gold coin that she has given Bob. That is impossible. She cannot make it a non-scarce good, right? That is why gold is a useful money, because it achieves this scarcity by its physical nature. And therefore it is relentlessly scarce, and it is never reversible. And therefore also immutable, right? The history, so to say, of the physical coin transaction, the physical coin moving in meat space is unchangeable. And once you have moved the coin from A to B, well, it is no longer at A, period. And when you move it back from B to A, well, it is no longer at B. And that is the attribute of immutability. Now, how is that achieved in Bitcoin? Because that is really curious. Because in order to achieve true scarcity, it needs to be immutable. And therefore, Bitcoin, the history of transactions, just as the history of meat space movement of gold, the history of Bitcoin transactions need to be immutable. And Bitcoin achieves that in two really interesting ways. One is basic asymmetric cryptography. And that is that in the consensus rules, in the Schelling coin of Bitcoin, we say that if you have a unspent transaction output, a coin, so to speak, that is registered in the Bitcoin blockchain, you can only spend it when you prove with a valid signature that you control the private key corresponding to the public key that is represented in this UTXO. And with the mathematical function of asymmetric cryptography and signing this Bitcoin transaction, you fulfill part of the consensus, right? You have verified that you have control over the private key by signing the message of the transaction. And this step can never be undone. Once you have made a digital signature, once you have computed it, the information has been done at least once, and it is information, right? So as soon as you share this information, this signed transaction, which you can no longer reverse, right? You might delete this information and make sure that nobody has access to it, but still, the information has existed. And therefore, you have to be careful with whom you share it. And once you decide to share the signed Bitcoin transaction, it is recognized by everyone in the network, by every full node in the network. And it is then, if it pays sufficient fees, added to the Bitcoin blockchain. It is included in a block with accumulated proof of work on top. And this is the aspect that generates the immutability, the irreversibility aspect of Bitcoin. The second part is proof of work. Why? We have this shared history of the blockchain, the shared history of transactions. And that needs editing. We need to add to the history. And we could do it that one centralized party writes everything in that ledger, in that book. But that would be not liberating. That would not be a novel. That would just be a plain old book. So let's make it interesting. Let's make sure that only those people who have proven that they have expended some energy on work, anything, only these people who have skin in the game have the right to add to the history of this list of transactions. And we prove this expended work with the Bitcoin our mining hashing algorithm. So we use the SHA-256 hashing algorithm repeatedly, and in a manner that you can prove it. Basically, we use energy, electricity, and apply that to computer hardware to generate a mathematical solution to a calculation. And this solution to the calculation is proof that we have expended some amount of energy on computing this transaction. And with this consensus rule that only those that have proven their work can add to the transaction, you actually have to add work and do work and expend energy and accumulate costs in order to rewrite or to write the history. And that goes exponential. So if you want to write the history of 4 blocks or 1 block at a time, you need to accumulate a lot of energy, and hopefully, with the luck of proof of work, you find a solution to the calculation that is valid. And that might be likely, but doing it a second time and doing it twice in a row, being the one who gets the right solution to this hashing solution first, being that first person again for a second time, is quite unlikely. For a third time, even more unlikely. So due to these inherent functions of proof of work, provably being able to secure that you have expended energy, and the increasing difficulty of writing continuous blocks of this history yourself, that makes Bitcoin irreversible. So that after roughly 6 confirmations, you can be kind of secure, kind of certain that the history will not be rewritten, because you would just have to accumulate too much work to rewrite it. And you can be even more certain of that after 100 blocks, roughly a day. 144 blocks is a day. And you, after 1,000 blocks, you can be quite certain that now this history will not be rewritten. And this is an inherent function in both mathematics and energy consumption, but also incentives and game theories. Because when you rewrite the history in a true manner, you do get rewarded with new Bitcoin. And if you fake the history in a wrong manner, then you get punished by having to prove that work, expanding these costs and expanding this energy, but not getting any reward in form of Bitcoin for it. So that is also the incentive structure, which we will talk about in length in one of the future shows of Bitcoin to the max. Here's today we've talked about the attribute of immutability and why it is the ultimate realization of true scarcity and how it can be achieved in this scarce network of Bitcoin alongside these non-scarce networks of the internet and sharing information. The true power of scarcity is that it is immutable and irreversible, and Bitcoin has achieved that with a complex process, but it is understandable. So thank you for sticking in here in Bitcoin to the max, the show on the World Crypto Network in a hopefully precise and short content. And it is brought to you and sponsored by you, my peers of the World Crypto Network, the patrons, the supporters, the gracious people who throw a couple satoshis so that we can continue making, hopefully, these educational videos and sharing our information, sharing our non-scarce resources with everyone and as many people as possible so that we increase this network of peers. Thank you for the supporters on patreon.com/WCN and teleco.in/HillebrandMax or MapBitcoins. Thank you very much for your support of the World Crypto Network, and see you on the next show. Bye-bye.